All right. How's everyone doing? Can everyone hear me okay? How's the music too? Sound is the most difficult thing to get going on my stream. It's really just a lot of pieces, parts. Okay, the captions are working. That is good. I hope everyone is doing okay. Happy October. Looks like everything is coming through. I didn't get the voice mod thing working today. It's just not working. So, and I'm standing today at the desk. If everyone's okay. Oh, I need to move that over here. So let's see what's happening with me. I'm a little bit late in getting started because we're working on getting my daughter's bed put together. That was fairly easy. Although we bought it from Overstock and we like part of the top board. It's got like a backboard and then along the length of it that goes against the wall and then end pieces. So it's kind of like a day bed, I guess. But the the wood was split on both sides on the backboard, so we got a replacement, and the replacement wood was also split there, and also one of the end boards was also split. So we were like, fuck it, we're not gonna. It's not like it's from Overstock. It's not an expensive bed, but it's you don't expect it to come split twice. So that was frustrating. That was my morning. We got through it. It was fairly easy to put together though, which was nice. Wasn't too complicated, so we got that done. I am working on writing. Actually, I'll go and pull that up here. Told you guys I've been working on this. I started working on it again this week. This is from. You should find a link to this on Discord. This is kind of working on talking about how the whole world became messed up from the very beginning, starting with here, the Pleistocene, the Paleolithic Age, and the Neolithic Age, and how it all starts there. It's humanity's journey through abundance and scarcity and back again. This is probably going to go at the beginning of in the introduction of my policies, and it will kind of act as a preface to explain how we fix everything from the standpoint of, in the context of scarcity. So I'm working on that. It's up to 36 pages, and I'm just kind of in this first part. It's kind of the most important part because it talks about the transition from the hunter-gatherers to the agrarian revolution. So I'm working on that, and it's really interesting to read about and put it together in here. So I'm working on that. Got D&D here on Sunday, which is nice. I'll see my parents tomorrow. Or not tonight, but tomorrow. D&D is tomorrow night. And then for lunch, we're going to my parents. So we'll see them. That's about all that's going on with me. Last week at work was pretty huge. I finished a bunch of two huge projects at work. Got an audit done. So there's lots of stuff at work, and it's really great. It's really great there. What's going on with you guys? Anything happening here this weekend? Hoping everyone's okay and safe from the hurricane. We're going to cover that here kind of to start in a little bit. I don't know anyone who's from there, thankfully, but we'll get into that and how my policies would affect that sort of a thing. Yeah. Anybody got anything before we get started here? Should get my voice mod working. I don't know. Don't know why it's not working. Anything? All right, let's get started here. So I first have some kind of comics, cartoons here that are kind of appropriate. This is more of a general thing here. I disapprove of the system, and then you always have these people. I hate capitalism. People saying, well, then why are you participating in it? Or why don't you just stop buying things or stop working, right? That's what this comic here is about. And then here's another one who's very much like it, but from the standpoint of feudalism. I wish there was something better than feudalism, but feudalism made your clothes, right? There's always that argument, well, I hate capitalism. Capitalism sucks. Well, capitalism made your phone, made your house, made your TV. whatever, right? And that's stupid, stupid, stupid argument. All right, so there's those two. And here's one that I'll probably end up posting on my Cancer of Capitalism post. It's really kind of exemplary of what capitalism is. It's that humanity's terminal disease, that disease of separation, right? The people here eating and seeing this guy who's just laying here sleeping in the middle of the sidewalk. Everyone else here is, you know, living their life and eating like nothing is happening over here. This is just such an amazing example of what capitalism really is. Alright, so here's one using SpongeBob. I fucking love walkable cities. I want to fucking go places without needing to drive. Shared this a few times when it comes onto my feed there. So there's that. Alright. So we're going to watch a few videos here that are just going to go through some of the horrific damage through Hurricane Ian, and then we'll get into my policies and how my policies would kind of deal with this, or this sort of a thing altogether. Any questions or comments before we get started? I think I'll keep the volume off so you don't have the talking heads saying your thing. So let's just, we got 3 or 4 or 5 minutes of videos here, and then we'll move on. I don't want to just give crisis porn going on here, but it's something we should probably see so we know what's going on, especially if you're not from the United States, especially if you're not from Florida. I guess it hit Florida and like South Carolina too, so it's kind of like right over here in this area. All right, let's get started and see some of this damage. I don't think I can max it. You got the water. Oh, okay, let's forward through this. Okay, here we go. Water in, got cars bobbing, water going up to the windshields. Yeah. Water going up to the hood of a truck. Look at this. All that water. All this stuff destroyed. Got some pictures here. Don't want pictures, I want video. Uprooted trees. Boats that have been moved into land and just left there by the storm. Like they're playing the same footage again. I got the van there bobbing in the water. That's how much water is there. Oh, here's some new stuff. Look at that. Pushing all that dirt up. Okay, we'll close. Done with that one. This one here.
All day long. Hard.
Fort Myers Beach. Look at that water. Look at that. Going up to the hood of a van here. Going up to like the halfway part of a fence. I like that wind blowing. I don't know what that is, but they're concentrating. It looks like a tree. It may have been uprooted and is going with the wind and the water. Wind blowing there in the palm trees, not so interesting. Alright, now I've got flooded streets here. Oh, 240 volts, underwater, good stuff. No danger at all. All these really nice, expensive houses. Oh yeah. Whoa, look, is that a... Oh, got a down wire. Down electrical wire. Sparking and arcing. That's not dangerous at all. Move on from that. The house is flooded. All right. All right, that's enough. That's enough of this horror show. Now this is down in Florida and also in South Carolina, I think is where it hit, where I saw. So there's just a tremendous. Actually, let's find a map of Hurricane Ian damage. Oh. This is in Charleston, South Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, so south of North Carolina. This is where the warning is. Okay, I don't want that. All right, so this is where they're projecting the path is going to go. It's going to go. Oh, what? That's not. Okay, I don't want projected path. This is in the past. Where did it actually go? Am I predicting? Okay, well, it's not easy to find. It hit Florida a lot, and then some of South Carolina, maybe North Carolina too. So there's just a tremendous amount of damage. Now, I'm going to share my policies here because I want to go ahead and talk about how my policies deal with this sort of a thing, because it's important. There's climate change is here. And the harm is real, as we can quite obviously see, and the government typically abandons these places, like Bush up with FEMA and Atlanta, Georgia, then what Trump and Biden's abandonment of Puerto Rico. Now we've got Florida, South Carolina, right? These places in the United States which are just devastated by natural disasters that are caused by climate change. So how do we deal with this? All right, so my policies, I say we need to do serious research on how we can prepare ourselves for climate change and for such disasters as the 20 supervolcanoes, raging forests and forest fires in California and so on, rising sea levels, massive flooding and rains, hurricanes like we just covered here, Hurricane Ida, earthquakes, pandemics, food and water shortages, increasingly acidic rain in oceans, increasingly hotter temperatures, wet bulb temperatures, and millions, actually I probably should put changes to billions of climate refugees. Instead of being caught with our pants down like has happened in Puerto Rico, Atlanta, and the various other places that have been struck by environmental tragedy, where the US government has completely and totally failed, leaving our people to suffer and die. This is especially important with somewhere near 2.4 billion people, a third of humanity living on the coast, that will end up being climate refugees within the next 50 to 100 years. So a lot of these places on the coast, people are going to become refugees by either hurricanes like we see here or by the water levels rising. It's actually a combination of the two depending on where you're at. So what do we need to do? A nationwide analysis and report about which areas will be affected and how from those sorts of disasters. We need to come up with a system to prevent, mitigate, or work with such disasters and its damage or effects, such as forming areas to accommodate for rising water levels, such as some of the Nordic countries are doing. And we need a drastic infrastructure evolution so that these potentially affected populations and communities can do one of the two following ideas: compensate for the dramatic environmental changes without an issue, or, my preference, we can move these entire communities out of the way of these issues into new sustainable and disaster-resistant smart cities. So, like, the storms aren't going to stop, right? Especially when it comes to the coast. The water levels aren't going to stop rising. So we really need to look at creating new, sustainable, smart cities that are centered around mass transportation and universal healthcare, universal education, centralized, municipalized, sustainable energy, and so on and so forth. Build the city the way they should be built from the ground up. Walkable cities, right? Walkable cities with mass transportation. So what we would need to do is build these cities from the ground up, inland, so that they're, and actually inland and probably north, a little bit, and then move everyone over there into this new city, and then tear down all of the stuff in Florida and South Carolina on these coastal areas that are going to get devastated by all these storms, and then recycle them. And then you can pretty much take that whole area, take all of Florida and rewild it, and even possibly set it up so that we have things in place to help compensate for potential hurricanes that hit those areas, to help prevent more damage from these storms from going inland, right? So this is the sort of thing that we should be doing. This is the sort of thing that our government hasn't done, because there's no money to be made in doing good things for people. They can just say, hey, yeah, Puerto Rico, Atlanta, Florida, sucks to be you. And then they'll use capitalism to not fix it, and so that their cronies can make millions and billions off letting these people of our country, as citizens of our country and other countries, to die. So that's what we need to be doing. This is what we should be doing in Florida, in the entire coastal regions. Now, California is going to be a little bit different. I don't know how much they're going to be affected by hurricanes. I haven't really heard of anything on that side, but it's still something we need to be looking at, specifically from the standpoint of having the sea level rise. The California is one of the largest. If California goes down, like by falling from the San Andreas Fault or something, our country is fucked. A lot of the world is fucked, because it is like the fourth largest economy in the world. So a lot of the world relies on California for what it provides. So yeah, we need to start being proactive in compensating for climate change. If we don't, then it's more expensive to deal with something after the fact than it is to be proactive. And that's really what this is about. You can save lives, you can recycle stuff, and be a lot more proactive at dealing with climate change. And that's what my policies are all about. So that's how I think, that's what the government should have done to deal with things like this. There should have already been cities made, move everyone basically from almost the entire state of California into a new area. And when I say new cities, I generally, like, the only issue I have with the Venus Project models, because Jock is brilliant and I love what he does, is just that the way the cities are put together, as beautiful as they are, they still contribute to urban sprawl. So the one thing I would change with some of what Jock does is using kind of what I talk about here in my policies, is like star scrapers or earth scrapers, or build up and we build down and not out so much. I mean, we'll need some on the outside just because some people want to visit or live there or whatever, and that's a thing, that's fine. But if you don't want to build a more sustainable future that still has urban sprawl, because that kind of defeats the whole purpose, right? So you could build 4, 5, 6 of these very large, like skyscrapers. I call star scrapers in this case, where it gets big enough, tall enough that basically reaches a space elevator so that we can get into space. But that's a little bit future, because we need active support and possibly fusion to really make that happen in the long term. But still, you can make a giant ass, very sustainable building that has hundreds, if not near 1,000 floors, and is also fairly wide to have green spaces and everything that you would need to fit people in there and have them live happily. Schools, stores, energy, and so on and so forth. So that's what we need to be doing for that. Any questions, comments, or thoughts on that sort of a thing? Because without being proactive and doing something like this, we're just leaving people to die. I mean, capitalists are more than happy to do that, right? Democrats, Republicans, let people die because there's money to be made in that. Go ahead and share this too, because I haven't shared that yet. This one. And this one. Alright, if you want me to share these, let me know. There's plenty of videos out there. These are just okay. Oh. Okay, questions, comments, and suggestions. I should have changed my thingy here. Far behind I am. Okay, let's go here. We're gonna read this. All right, questions before we move on. Anatomy of a coup, how CIA front laid foundations for Ukraine war. I think last week we read an article talking about it from 2014, how the coup created by the United States is going to lead to a proxy war. It was pretty prescient. I think Jonathan Pilger, I think is his name, wrote the article in 2014, predicted this. So we're gonna read another one kind of on this. Anything, anybody? Going once, going twice? All right. Anatomy of a coup, how CIA front laid foundations for Ukraine war. This is from July 1st of this year, I expect. Obvious examples of Central Intelligence Agency covert action abroad are difficult to identify today, save for occasional acknowledged calamities such as the long-running $1 billion effort to overthrow the government of Syria via funding, training, and arming barbarous jihadist groups. In part, this stems from many of the CIA's traditional responsibilities and activities being farmed out to overt organizations, most significantly the National Endowment for Democracy. Yeah, we've read something about that before. Founded in November 1983, then CIA Director William Casey was at the heart of the National Endowment for Democracy's creation. He sought to construct a public mechanism to support opposition groups, activist movements, and media outlets overseas that would engage in propaganda and political activism to disrupt, destabilize, and ultimately displace enemy regimes. Subterfuge with a human face, to coin a phrase. Underlining the endowment's insidious true nature, in a 1991 Washington Post article boasting of its prowess in overthrowing communism in Eastern Europe, senior NED official Alan Weinstein acknowledged a lot of what we do today was done covertly 25 years ago by the CIA. It begins. Fast forward to September 2013, and Carl Gershman, National Endowment for Democracy's chief from its launch until summer 2021, authored an op-ed for the Washington Post, outlining how his organization was hard at work wresting countries in Russia's near abroad, the constellation of former Soviet republics and Warsaw Pact states, away from Moscow's orbit. Okay, there we go. Along the way, he described Ukraine as the biggest prize in the region, suggesting Kiev joining Europe would accelerate the demise of Russian Vladimir Putin. 6 months later, Ukraine's elected President Viktor Yanukovych was ousted in a violent coup. Writing in Consortium News not long before that fateful day, investigative legend Robert Perry recorded how, over the previous year, National Endowment for Democracy had funded 65 projects in Ukraine, totaling over $20 million. This amounted to what the late journalist dubbed a shadow political structure of media and activist groups that could be deployed to stir up unrest when the Ukrainian government didn't act as desired. NED's pivotal role in unseating Yanukovych can thus be considered beyond dispute in an unambiguous matter of record, yet not only is this ever acknowledged in the mainstream press, but Western journalists aggressively rubbish the idea, viciously attacking those few who dare challenge the established orthodoxy of U.S. innocence. As if to assist in this deceit, NED has removed many entries from its website in the years since the coup, which amply underline its role in Yanukovych's overthrow. For example, on February 3rd, 2014, less than 3 weeks before police withdrew from Kiev, effectively handing the city to armed protesters and prompting Yanukovych to flee the country, NED convened an event, Ukraine's Lessons Learned from the Orange Revolution to Euromaidan. It was led by Ukrainian journalist Sergei Lashenko, who at the time was finishing up a Ned-sponsored Reagan Facile Democracy Fellowship in Washington, D.C. Alongside him was Nadia Dyack, Ned's then senior advisor for Europe and Eurasia and graduate of St. Anthony's College, Oxford, a renowned recruiting pool for British intelligence founded by former spies. Oh, that's fascinating. Just before her death in January 2019, she was bestowed the Order of Princess Olga, one of Kiev's highest honors, a particularly palpable example of the intimate, enduring ties between Ned and the Ukrainian government. While the event's online listing remains extant today, linked supporting documents, including PowerPoint slides that accompany Lyshenko's talk and a summary of the event highlights, have been deleted. What prompted the purge isn't clear, although it could well be significant that Lyshenko's oratory offered a very clear blueprint for guaranteeing the failure of the 2004's Orange Revolution, another Ned-orchestrated push. Wasn't repeated, and the country remained captured by Western financial, political, and ideological interest post-Maidan. It was a roadmap Ned subsequently followed to the letter. Along the way, Lyshenko highlighted the importance of funding non-governmental organizations, exploiting the internet and social media as alternative sources of information, and the danger of unreformed state television. So it was that on March 19th, representatives of the far-right Svoboda Party, which has been linked to false flag massacre of protesters on February 20th, an event that made the downfall of Yanukovych's government a fait accompli, broke into the office of Alexander Panteleimon, chief of Ukraine's state broadcaster, and beat him over the head until he signed a resignation letter. Wow. That shocking incident motivated by the station broadcasting a Kremlin ceremony at which Vladimir Putin signed a bill formalizing Crimea as a part of Russia, was one of the many live-streamed by protesters. One of the many events live-streamed by protesters that traveled far and wide online. You're missing a word there. Pantelimonov's savage defenestration notwithstanding, good word, much of this live-streamed output served to present foreign audiences with a highly romantic narrative of the demonstrations and their participants, which bore no relation to reality. The revolution will be televised. Writing in Ned's quarterly academic publication, Journal of Democracy, in July that year, Lyshenko discussed in detail the media's fundamental role in the Maidan's coup success, drawing particular attention to the work of online journalist Mustafa Nayyem. Nayyem personally kickstarted the protest in the previous November, rallying hundreds of his Facebook followers to protest in Kiev's independence, now Maidan Square, after Yanukovych scrapped the Ukrainian-European Association Agreement in favor of a more agreeable deal with Moscow. Nayyem was no ordinary online journalist. He had by that point worked alongside Lyshenko for many years at Ukrainska Pravda, an opposition media outlet funded by Ned, and also USAID, another CIA front, which likewise played a key role in the Maidan coup. This may account for why in October 2012, Nayyem was one of 6 Ukrainians whisked to Washington, D.C. by Meridian International, a State Department-connected organization that identifies and grooms future overseas leaders to observe and experience that year's presidential election. Funded by the U.S. Embassy in Kiev over 10 days, they gained a deeper understanding of the American electoral process, meeting candidates and election officials and touring voting facilities. They were also invited to discuss Ukraine's progress toward a more fair and transparent election process with equally curious representatives of U.S. government agencies. With whom the sextet met is unstated, although promotional pictures now show Nayyem filming a personal summit with John McCain, oh my god, on his smartphone. The video was posted on his personal YouTube channel. In it, Nayyem asks the noted warhawk for his thoughts on Ukraine, to which he responds, "I'm concerned with the influence of Russia." This is striking, for McCain flew to Kiev in December 2013 to give an address to Maidan protesters, flanked by known neo-Nazi Ola Yanabak, while then State Department official Victoria Nuland notoriously handed out motivational cookies to attendees. Okay. On February 4th, 2014, one day after Lyshenko's NED presentation, an intercepted recording of a telephone call between Nuland, now Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, and U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine Jeffrey Pyat, was leaked, in which the pair discussed how Washington was midwifing Yanukovych's ouster and named several handpicked individuals to head the post-coup government. Whether Naim's influential U.S. contacts in any way motivated his decision to ignite the Maidan demonstrations in November 2013 isn't certain. The pivotal part he himself played in promoting the protests globally is far clearer, for he was a founder of digital broadcaster Hromadske TV. In his Journal of Democracy article, Lyshenko records how Hromadske hadn't even officially launched when it began streaming Maidan demonstrations live, the literal second they erupted at Naim's direction. While Lyshenko coyly states that Hromadske drew most of its modest funding from international organizations and the donations of Ukrainian citizens, it actually received hundreds of thousands of dollars from a variety of questionable sources, including the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, USAID, George Soros' International Renaissance Foundation, American oligarch Pierre Omidyar, and of course, NED. Hromadske's audience expanded rapidly both within and without Ukraine thereafter. Its embedded output eagerly recycled by countless mainstream news outlets, meaning Western viewers were presented with a single partisan perspective of the unrest, and a highly misleading one at that. Based on Hromadske's coverage, overseas onlookers would have been entirely forgiven for concluding that the protests were wholly energized by concerns over human rights and democracy, and overwhelmingly, if not universally, popular. In a representative February 2014 essay dismissing as Russian propaganda the demonstrable fact that both the Maidan demonstrators and their leadership were riddled with neo-Nazis, academic and Journal of Democracy contributor Andreas Umland boldly declared the movement as a whole reflects the entire Ukrainian population, young and old. Nothing could have been farther from the truth. An extraordinarily revealing Washington Post op-ed by North American academics Keith Darden and Lucan Way, published the same month, detonated this wholly bogus narrative, which has nonetheless only endured and intensified ever since. The pair forensically exposed how less than 20% of the protesters professed to be driven by violations of democracy or the threat of dictatorship. Only 40 to 45% of Ukrainians were in favor of European integration. Yanukovych remained the most popular political figure in the country, and no poll conducted to date has ever indicated mass support for the uprising. In fact, quite large majorities oppose takeover of regional governments by the opposition, and the population remained bitterly divided on the future of Ukraine, Darden wrote. Such hostility stemmed from anti-Russian rhetoric and the iconography of Western Ukrainian nationalism, rife with demonstrators not playing well among the Ukrainian majority. Of the 50% of Ukraine's population residing in regions that had strongly identified with Russia for over 2 centuries, nearly all were alienated by anti-Russian rhetoric and symbols. That's kind of the way it goes when there's two sides, right? Anti-Russian forms of Ukrainian nationalism expressed on the Maidan are certainly not representative of the general view of Ukrainians. Electoral support for these views and for political parties who espouse them has always been limited, Darden and Ritt concluded. Their presence and influence in the protest movement far outstrip their role in Ukrainian politics, and their support barely extends geographically beyond a few Western provinces. Pro-Ukrainian agenda. Despite, or perhaps because of, such slanted coverage, Hromadske only grew from strength to strength subsequently. Such was its surging popularity, Lyshenko recorded. Even Ukraine's state broadcaster struck a deal to amplify its output, thus handing this small garage webcasting enterprise an audience of millions. In the process, Ukrainians and the world were well educated in the false narrative of Yanukovych being overthrown by a popular will. Hermansky's potential to influence perceptions was evidently not lost on other Western governments either. In 2015, the British Foreign Office provided significant funds to develop radio broadcasting initiatives in the Russian-majority regions of Donetsk and Luhansk for a project dubbed Donbass Calling. Next year, London proffered yet more sums to the outlet so it could serve as local information provider to an audience of up to 1 million people. In 2017, Hermansky again received hundreds of thousands of pounds to expand even further into the breakaway regions. Among other things, Britain supported the installation of 16 FM transmitters in Ukraine-controlled areas along the contact line and gray zone in the east, meaning the station could reach up to 2 million citizens potentially possessed of separatist objectives. Public profiles of Leshchenko, that's how I should pronounce it, Leshchenko. Yeah, because there's a letter which has this sound, sh, Leshchenko. And Naim concurrently rose exponentially too. In Ukraine's October 2014 elections, both were elected to parliament as a part of Petro Poroshenko's bloc, the former becoming a member of its anti-corruption committee, the latter its cross-party group on European integration, leading to glowing profiles in the Western media. All along, Ned closely monitored their progress, hailing the pair as emblems of the new liberated Ukraine that flowered in the wake of Maidan. Nonetheless, Leshchenko's personal commitment to democracy was rather undermined in August 2016 when he and Artem Sitnik, head of Kiev's National Anti-Corruption Bureau, leaked documents dubbed the Black Ledger, identifying payments to Donald Trump's then campaign manager Paul Manafort from Yanukovych's Party of Regions to the U.S. media. Well, that's interesting. Leshchenko expressed his hope that the disclosure would damage Trump's electoral chances and be the last nail in Manafort's coffin lid, as a Trump presidency would change the pro-Ukrainian agenda in American foreign policy. He was one of several prominent politicians in Kiev involved to an unprecedented degree in trying to weaken the Trump bandwagon, as the Atlantic Council, NATO's propaganda arm, conceded at the time. As hoped, Manafort duly resigned, and the Russiagate racket then erupted. A connivance that went some way to ensuring the pro-Ukrainian agenda in American foreign policy wasn't compromised one iota. Indeed, Trump's term in office was typified by ever-escalating hostility between Washington and Moscow, the Oval Office resident going to dangerous lengths his predecessor had consistently refrained from to arm and galvanize the most reactionary and violent elements of the Ukrainian armed forces, including notorious neo-Nazi Azov Battalion, and tear up Cold War arms control treaties, much to Moscow's chagrin. Yeah, this is something that's problematic too. It's all problematic, but this is a huge problem. I think that's the Cold War arms. This is the nuclear proliferation treaty or something like that. In December 2018, a Ukrainian court ruled that Leshchenko and Sitnik's release of the Black Ledger was illegal, amounting to interfering in the electoral process of the U.S. that harmed the interest of Ukraine as a state. In May the next year, a corruption probe was launched after Leshchenko purchased a $300,000 apartment in central Kiev, a sum far in excess of his apparent means. 2 months later, he was voted out of parliament, Zelensky's servant of the People Party candidate taking his seat in a landslide. Leshchenko's friend and collaborator Naim simply opted to not stand in order to seek a government post connected to the Donbass. Despite no longer being a part of the legislature, Leshchenko had continued to wield significant sway over the Ukrainian government, advising Zelensky on Russian disinformation to this day. Mere days before the Russian invasion began, in an interview with The Guardian, Leshchenko referred to the Minsk Accords, which Zelensky stood on a specific platform of implementing, as toxic, suggesting the leader would betray his country by adhering to their obligations, which included granting autonomy to Donetsk and Luhansk. Okay, interesting. This I don't know anything about. Oh, here's the actual link to it. It's in there. This reflected Ned's position. On February 14th this year, its Journal of Democracy published an article declaring the Accords to be a bad idea for the West and a serious threat to Ukrainian democracy and stability, not least because they would mean tacitly accepting Russia's false narratives about the Donbass conflict, namely that the conflict was caused by the West orchestrated coup in 2014. In other words, an objective analysis of what actually happened and why, in which Ned is completely central. Still, the organization didn't need to rely purely on Lishchenko to keep the Minsk Accords moribund. Its extensive network of assets in the country and Washington's dark alliance with Ukraine's far right was more than sufficient to ensure that Zelensky's overwhelming popular mission of restoring relations with Russia would and could never be fulfilled. In solidarity, in the hours following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Ned hurried to remove any and all trace of its funding for organizations in Ukraine from its website. A search of the Ned Grants database today for Ukraine returns no results, but a snapshot of the page captured February 25th reveals that since 2015, a total of 334 projects in the country have been awarded a staggering $22.4 million. By Ned President Dwayne Wilson's reckoning, Kiev is the organization's fourth largest funding recipient worldwide. Wow. An archive of Ned funding in Ukraine over 2021, which has now been replaced with a statement in solidarity with Kiev, offers extensive detail on the precise projects backed by the CIA front over that fateful 12-month period. It points to a preponderant focus on purported Russian misdeeds in eastern Ukraine. One grant of $58,000 was provided to the NGO Truth Hounds to monitor, document, and spotlight human rights violations and war crimes in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Another of $48,000 was provided to Ukraine's War Childhood Museum, to educate the Ukrainian public about the consequences of the war through a series of public events. Yet another received by charity East SOS aimed to raise public awareness of Russia's policies of persecution and colonization in the region and document illustrative cases. Its findings circulated to the UN Human Rights Council, the European Courts of Human Rights, and the International Court of Justice. There was no suggestion this wellspring would be used to document any abuses by Ukrainian government forces. UN research indicates 2018 to 2021, over 80% of civilian casualties were recorded on the Donbass side. Meanwhile, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe reports show that shelling of civilian areas in the breakaway regions intensified dramatically in the weeks leading up to February 24th, potentially as a precursor of a full-blown military offensive. As such, Ned's expurgation of records exposing its role in fomenting and precipitating the horror now unfolding in southeast Ukraine not only protects de facto CIA agents on the ground, it also reinforces and legitimizes the Biden administration's fraudulent narrative, endlessly and uncritically reiterated in the Western media, that Russia's invasion was entirely unprovoked and groundless. Ukrainians now live with the mephitic legacy of that reckless, unadmitted meddling in the most brutal manner imaginable. They may well do for many years to come. Meanwhile, the men and women who orchestrated it rest comfortably in Washington, D.C., enslaved from any scrutiny or consequences whatsoever, every day cooking up fresh schemes to undermine and topple troublesome foreign leaders. Hailed as champions of liberty by the mainstream press every step of the way. There you go. That's a long article talking about how the U.S. and the CIA and its puppet organizations worked to undermine and set up the proxy war in Ukraine. All right, any questions, comments, and suggestions on that before we move on? All right, we won't go through that. Anything, anybody? All right, so this next one The U.S. is becoming a developing country on global rankings that measure democracy and inequality. This is from September 15th, so this is 2 weeks ago. The United States may regard itself as a leader of the free world, but an index of development released in July 2022 places the country much farther down the list. In its global rankings, the United Nations Office of Sustainable Development dropped the U.S. to 41st worldwide, down from its previous ranking of 32nd, who dropped 9 places. Under this methodology, an expansive model of 17 categories or goals, many of them focus on the environment and equity, the U.S. ranks between Cuba and Bulgaria. Both are widely regarded as developing countries. The U.S. is now considered a flawed democracy according to the Economist Democracy Index. Yeah, I think we were actually worse than that at some point. This is... Okay, this is fairly recent. Okay, yeah, flawed democracy. Okay, so we're... Okay, so we're not full democracy, but we're somewhere not totally horrible. Okay. As a political historian who studies U.S. institutional development, I recognize these dismal ratings as the inevitable result of 2 problems. Racism has cheated many Americans out of healthcare, education, economic security, and environment they deserve. At the same time, as threats to democracy become more serious, a devotion to American exceptionalism keeps the country from candid appraisals and course corrections. Yeah, this is, American exceptionalism is a huge disease. And here, yes, racism, systemic and structural racism, true statement. So what I say is that a democracy cannot exist without a well-educated populace, and we definitely sure as fuck don't have that. And a democracy can't exist without high levels of equality as well, and we sure as hell don't have that either, because we have, I think, the largest level of income inequality in the developed world. I mean, we're like, it's like 475 to 1 or some shit like that. I think that's even based off median income, not the lowest. Which, basing it off the median is kind of manipulative. But anyhow, so yes, this is true. The other America. The Office of Sustainable Development rankings differ from more traditional development measures in that they are more focused on the experiences of ordinary people, including their ability to enjoy clean air and water, than the creation of wealth. Yes, exactly right. Good stuff. So while the gigantic size of the American economy counts in its scoring, so too does unequal access to the wealth it produces. When judged by accepted measures like the Gini coefficient, income inequality in the U.S. has risen markedly in the past 30 years by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's measure. The U.S. has the biggest wealth gap among G7 nations. Yep. All right, hold on a second. I'm going to go ahead and shift to my... I'm going to go ahead and sit down. Lower my... lower my desk, and I'll adjust my okay, no. All right, lower my camera a little bit, and we'll continue on. Much better. Okay. All right, these results reflect structural disparities in the United States, which are most pronounced for African Americans. Such differences have persisted well beyond the demise of chattel slavery and the repeal of Jim Crow laws. Yeah, so, and I've got a huge post that I'm writing which goes into the systemic and structural violence, racism within the United States, and yeah, this is so true. Oh, true, because the racism and the slavery began and became a part of colonial life and values and social values and stuff like that, even before the United States became a country. Scholar W.E.B. Du Bois first exposed this kind of structural inequality in his 1899 analysis of black life in the urban North, the Philadelphia Negro. Though he noted distinctions of affluence and status within black society, Du Bois found the lives of African Americans to be a world apart from white residents, a city within a city. Du Bois traced the high rates of poverty, crime, and illiteracy prevalent in Philadelphia's black community to discrimination, divestment, and residential segregation, not to the black people's degree of ambition or talent. Right, and it's very hard to have or even make good on ambition or talent if you don't have education or money or, you know, a means to support yourself or anything like that. So the systemic and structural racism keeping people of color from achieving things. More than half a century later, with characteristic eloquence, Martin Luther King Jr. similarly decried the persistence of the other America, where the buoyancy of hope was transformed into the fatigue of despair. To illustrate his point, King referred to many of the same factors studied by Du Bois: the conditions of housing, household wealth, education, social mobility and literacy rates, health outcomes, and employment. On all these metrics, black Americans fared worse than whites, but as King noted, many people of various backgrounds live in this other America. The benchmarks of development invoked by these men also feature prominently in the 1962 book The Other America by political scientist Michael Harrington, founder of a group that eventually became the Democratic Socialists of America. Harrington's work so unsettled President John F. Kennedy that it reportedly galvanized him into formulating a war on poverty. Kennedy's successor, Lyndon Johnson, waged this metaphorical war, but poverty found two discrete places. Rural areas and segregated neighborhoods stayed poor well beyond his mid-20th century federal efforts. Yeah, and Lyndon B. Johnson, I'll go and find this for you, but I wrote an article on his, the Kerner report. There was this long hot summer of 1967, and he commissioned this report to be created. I assume it was, can't remember exactly, but I think, again, white police officers murdered a black male, and that's sparked off hundreds and hundreds of protests and stuff during the long hot summer of 1967. So LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, commissioned this report to be made, and basically what the Kerner report said is the same thing we've known for a very, very long time. Much like they're saying here, even W.E.B. Du Bois in 1899 said Americans need to stop being racist fucks, and we need to greatly reduce inequality in people of color. That's really, it's that simple. Now, Lyndon Johnson didn't like this. He basically disavowed it and wanted nothing to do with this report because the report didn't give him a huge pat on the back for his deal that he put together for dealing with poverty. In large part, that is because federal efforts during that critical time accommodated rather than confronted the forces of racism, according to my research. Across a number of policy domains, the sustained effort of segregationist Democrats in Congress, Biden, right, resulted in an incomplete and patchwork system of social policy. Democrats from the South cooperated with Republicans to doom to failure efforts to achieve universal health care or unionized workforces. Rejecting proposals for strong federal intervention, they left a checkered legacy of local funding for education and public health. Today, many years later, the effects of a welfare state tailored to racism is evident, though perhaps less visibly so, in the inadequate health policies driving a shocking decline in average American life expectancy. So that not having universal health care will be part of it, but also just inequality in and of itself as a broad scale thing that exists causes this health decline as well, of which, there are many different factors. Education, just the existence of inequality, right? The existence of poverty, not having universal health care, not having universal education, and all these sorts of things. Declining democracy. There are other ways to measure a country's level of development, and on some of them the U.S. fares better. The U.S. currently ranks ranks 21st on the United Nations Development Program Index, which measures fewer factors than the Sustainable Development Index. Good results in average income per person and an average of 13.7 years of schooling situate the United States squarely in the developed world. Its ranking suffers, however, on appraisals that place greater weight on political systems. Economist Democracy Index now groups the U.S. among flawed democracies with an overall score that ranks between Estonia and Chile. It falls short of being a top-rated full democracy, in large part because of a fractured political culture. This growing divide is most apparent in the divergent paths between red and blue states. Yeah, of course. Not that, blue states are all that much better, but red states are 100% actively trying to keep people of color and the poor from voting. Both parties are still engaging in gerrymandering, so they're both guilty, very guilty of that. The Democrats have worked very hard to keep Green Party people off the ballot, so neither one are for democracy. Although the analysts from The Economist applaud the peaceful transfer of power in the face of an insurrection intended to disrupt it, their reports lament that, according to a January 2020 poll, only 55% of Americans believe that Mr. Biden legitimately won the 2020 election, despite no evidence of widespread voter fraud. Yeah, voter fraud is basically non-existent, at least as far as I've read. The big issue is electoral fraud. I wouldn't worry about voter fraud because it doesn't really happen. And if it does happen, it's primarily conservatives. But also, electoral fraud is the big issue, right? Because much like we're talking about gerrymandering as an issue, talking about Democrats, Republicans trying to keep people off the ballots, Democrats, Republicans closing down polling stations, closing down DMVs so people can get IDs and stuff like that, right? There's lots of ways that the Democrats and Republicans are fucking with the electoral system. And Democrats aren't immune to it either, because they're definitely doing their part. We can talk about the elections and the primaries in 2016 and 2020, what they did with Bernie Sanders, right, and their supporters. They engaged in electoral fraud, voter suppression, money laundering, and collusion to prevent Bernie Sanders and supporters from even having a chance. They're suppressing the voices of supporters there at the convention and all sorts of horrible things. Democrats bad, Republicans bad. Election denialism carries with it the threat that election officials in Republican-controlled jurisdictions will reject or alter vote tallies that do not favor the Republican Party in upcoming elections, further jeopardizing the score of the U.S. on the Democracy Index. Red and Blue America also differs on access to modern reproductive care for women. This hurts the U.S. gender equality rating, one aspect of the United Nations Sustainable Development Index. Okay, that's cool. Since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, Republican-controlled states have enacted or proposed grossly restrictive abortion laws to the point of endangering a woman's health. I believe that when paired with structural inequalities and fractured social policy, the dwindling Republican government to democracy lends weight to the classification of the U.S. as a developing country. American exceptionalism, big disease. To address the poor showing of the United States on a variety of global surveys, one must contend with the idea of American exceptionalism, a belief that American superiority over the rest of the world. Both political parties have long promoted this belief at home and abroad, but exceptionalism receives a more formal treatment from Republicans. It was the first line of the Republican Party's national platform of 2016 and 2020, we believe in American exceptionalism. And it served as the organizing principle behind Donald Trump's vow to restore patriotic education to America's schools. So patriotic education is fascism. It's indoctrination. It's brainwashing. If you have to brainwash your children to be patriotic or to love your country, that's fascism. And you also have a whole lot of things to be taking a look at with your country if they don't love your country naturally. In Florida, after lobbying by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, The State Board of Education in July 2022 approved standards rooted in American exceptionalism while barring instruction in critical race theory, an academic framework teaching the kind of structural racism Du Bois exposed long ago. With a tendency to proclaim excellence rather than pursue it, the peddling of American exceptionalism encourages Americans to maintain a robust sense of national achievement despite mounting evidence to the contrary. Yeah, this is a good article. Good stuff here. Any questions or comments or suggestions on this before we move on? Anybody? Anybody? Alright, this is from Vox. Anything? Anything? Alright. So now we're going to get into some more stuff. God, it's only been an hour. This is from September 27th, so it's just like last week. From Vox, Amazon's robots are getting closer to replacing human hands. So, in my post here, I talk about, I answer questions from a Republican apologist, not a Republican, sorry, a capitalist apologist. Talking, and one of the first things I talk about is the upcoming AI and an automation apocalypse, right? So this is kind of one of those things that points to the issues with capitalism and people suffering, that there's more automation going on, people are losing jobs. This has especially become much more prevalent with COVID and so on. At my Walmart here in the area, they've gotten rid of over half of the normal checkouts, and now there's only mostly just self-checkouts, and I imagine that's going to go away fairly in the next year or so, so that there's no checkout positions at all there. All right, here we go. Amazon's robots are getting closer to replacing human hands. Automation is a good thing, only if we have our system set up to not destroy people's lives in the process. All right. In 2019, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos predicted that within a decade, robotic systems will be advanced enough to grasp items with the dexterity of a human hand. 3 years later, Amazon looks to be making progress toward that goal. A recent video published on the company's science blog features a new pinch-grasping robot that could one day do a lot of the work that humans in Amazon warehouses do today. See? Or potentially help workers do their jobs more easily. Bullshit. The topic of warehouse automation is more relevant than ever in the retail and e-commerce industries, especially for Amazon, which is the largest online retailer and the second largest private sector employer in the US. Recode reported in June that research conducted inside Amazon predicted that the company could run out of workers to hire in the US by 2024 if it did not execute a series of sweeping changes, including increasing automation in its warehouses. Wow. At the same time, the company is facing the prospect of US workers starting to unionize after the victory by the Amazon labor union in the historic Staten Island vote, and another upcoming union election in October in upstate New York. Labor activists have long speculated that Amazon might ramp up automation efforts in response to unionization activity. Yeah, of course, because they can't. It's harder to exploit the workers when they have a union, so it's much better to get rid of humans altogether and shift to automation so that they don't have to worry about the pesky humans and their wanting to not die in poverty problem, right? Ugh. A statement provided by Amazon spokesman, the company's director of robotics AI, Siddhartha Srinivasa, said, "We have an incredible opportunity to help advance the science of robotic manipulation in ways that meaningfully benefit our employees and our customers. Our investments in robotics and technology are helping make jobs in our facilities better, easier, and safer, as well as creating new career opportunities for our people." No, it's the entire point here is to get rid of people. The only thing that will be left will be much higher level educational positions requiring robotics and programming and that sort of a thing in there. Most manual labor stuff will go away. Robotic arm in question does not look as futuristic as you might imagine. The proof of concept machine uses an off-the-shelf metal pincher rather than some novel grasping device. But it can pick up a new item and deposit it on a metal chute every 3 seconds. At the rate it's going in the video, Amazon says the robot could handle more than 1,000 items an hour, meaning it could pick and stow items at rates several times faster than a human worker could. From a box of crayons to a container of what looks like garlic powder to a whisk broom, each item is grasped and moved with no human direction. The robot utilizes multiple cameras to help it see the assortment of items in front of it, as well as machine learning to help it decide the best way to pick up a given item, and motion planning algorithms to help the robot navigate the crowded scene without bumping or damaging any of the goods. Preliminary tests also found that the robot damages certain products at a much lower rate than other manipulation robots Amazon has tested. Let's go ahead and watch this. We'll go ahead and watch this, just see what they... Yeah, here we go. That's pretty good. If only I could recognize flipping it on the top. So it's top side up. Okay. Robot doing robot things. The video and the robotic systems in it were created last year in a controlled lab test by Amazon technologists. This robot prototype can only move items weighing less than 2 pounds. In testing, the robot was asked to handle hundreds of different items in this weight group and successfully grasped and moved around 95% of them. According to the Amazon spokesman Xavier Van Chow, on a larger scale, the 2-pound weight restriction would still allow the robot to grasp a selection of items making up about half of Amazon's total product assortment. But the company's working on grasping solutions that were able to handle every type of item that could fit inside an Amazon box, perhaps by combining a pincher attachment with a popular suction method and having the system trained to know which hand to be used for which item. How long will it take for Amazon to create a single robot that can handle the vast majority of products is up for debate, but it's a question of when and not if. And when this when becomes now, we'll have an answer to one of the greatest unknowns of this era of automation. Will a new generation of warehouse robots that can grasp goods almost as well as human hands make work better or easier for the people doing these jobs? Or will the technological evolution eliminate the need for these workers and their jobs? I don't know how this is a question. I mean, this is what capitalism does. They don't give a flying fuck about people. They just want to increase profits because that's all that matters. If they can get rid of people, their profits will skyrocket. An Amazon spokesperson said the company is betting on the latter based on the way it has utilized other types of robots in its warehouses up to now. In June, Amazon announced a prototype of a robotic system called Cardinal that lifts and sorts already packaged orders, and the company claims reduces the risk of employee injuries by handling tasks that require lifting and turning of large or heavy packages or complicated packing in a confined space. The company says it expects to introduce the system into an unspecified number of fulfillment centers in 2023. And last year, the company unveiled another robot arm that it calls Robin, which handles a similar task with lighter packages. Van Chow, the company spokesperson, declined to provide details on the deployment of either Cardinal or Robin robots. Amazon history in robotics dates to when the company bought a company called Kiva for $775 million. In the decades since, it has rolled out more than 500,000 roaming warehouse robots. During the same period, the company says it has hired more than 1 million workers and points to this fact to try to dispel the notion that warehouse advancements are leading to worker elimination. Well, I mean, you add a robot, so you get rid of, so that automatically leads to jobs being lost because they're doing work that person could be doing. I mean, it's not rocket science. In the early days of the Kiva acquisition, our vision was never tied to a binary decision of people or technology, the company said in a recent blog post. Instead, it was about people and technology working safely and harmoniously together to deliver for our customers. That vision remains today. The Kiva robots did make some Amazon warehouse jobs easier. For those workers in picker or storer roles, robots now transport shelves to them at a stationary workstation where they stand for 10 hours a day with padding beneath their feet. In Amazon's pre-Kiva days, these workers would walk 10 to 20 miles a day, plucking merchandise from or adding goods to aisle after aisle of inventory shelves. Yeah, it's kind of a mixed blessing here. Having the extra walking is good for their bodies because, you know, motion is life. But yeah. Kiva robots also brought downsides. Before robots arrived, a picker might have had a goal to handle 100 items an hour. Amazon tripled those expectations when the robots, not the workers, did the traveling. And with the addition of robots, injury rates increased as workers were forced to move faster to keep up with higher quotas. Yep. Tasks being completed by Amazon test robots like the pinch grasping one in the new video potentially have more direct overlap with existing worker tasks. A robot like an Amazon picker or storer is retrieving a piece of merchandise from one location and moving it to another as quickly as possible without damaging it. That said, while the robot prototype is picking items at a rate of more than 1,000 an hour, 3 times what the worker quota is, around triple the typical rate of human pickers in Amazon warehouses. It's not apples to apples comparison. Amazon pickers in warehouses with robots have to pull each item out of a cluttered shelving unit and sometimes have to use a step stool to reach merchandise at the top. Similarly, Amazon stores have to fit each piece of merchandise into an open space and a mobile shelving unit versus the robot that is simply moving it from one open space to another. Van Chow, the Amazon spokesperson, said the prototype in the video is neither tested nor designed to pick items from shelves as workers do in the company's current robotic warehouses. Sure, fair, but this is a stepping stone, right? All they need are rails, and then have a travel. Still, robotics experts are paying attention. Martin Ford, the author of multiple books about robotics, including Rule of the Robots, said while it's unclear how Amazon's most recent robot prototype would perform in a high-volume warehouse, it still seems to show remarkable progress. With advancements like Amazon's, as well as those of many well-funded startups building robotic systems to try to solve for challenge of grasping with the dexterity of humans, it's inevitable that the problem will be solved, perhaps sooner than many of us expect, Ford told Recode. And once that happens, Ford added, there's little doubt Amazon warehouses, as well as many other environments, are going to become a lot less labor intensive. Okay, let's change this. As well as many other environments are going to fire a lot of workers. That's what this is really about, firing a lot of workers. Amazon maintains that robots and people will continue to work together inside its warehouses. Well, of course, because you need human maintenance workers, right? You need roboticists and programmers and mechanics to make sure the robots are still working, but that's gonna eventually be the only humans left. For robotics, experts say that one day the company may have the real option to depend on robots to do a lot of the work it currently depends on human employees to do. Right, and that's exactly right. And the issue here is within capitalism is that as we increase automation and the use of AI, people lose jobs, and people losing jobs within capitalism means they lose their livelihood. They lose their houses, they lose their health care, they lose, everything, because our country specifically has no way of allowing these people to survive. We don't have universal health care, we don't have universal education, we don't have housing as a human right, we don't have universal daycare, we don't have anything that supports our workers. It's either you can be exploited by capitalism for corporate profit or you can fucking die in the streets. That's just the way it is. That's capitalism, and the United States is the primary example of what unbridled capitalism really is. Now we've got a bunch of stuff here. Well, not a bunch. Okay, 2 articles here on the environment. Questions, comments, or suggestions as we move along. I expect we've probably read this already. It's 7 months old, but we'll go and do it again. Anything? Anybody? All right. This is from The Guardian. It says about 7 months ago. World spends 1.8 trillion a year on subsidies that harm environment, study finds. Bet you most of that is fossil fuels. Research prompts warnings humanity is financing its own extinction through subsidies damaging the climate and wildlife. Yep. This is February 2022, so yeah, definitely quite a while ago. The world is spending at least $1.8 trillion every year on subsidies, driving the annihilation of wildlife and the rise in global heating, according to a new study prompting warnings that humanity is financing its own extinction. From tax breaks for beef production, okay, yep, that's a big deal, right? In the Amazon to financing support for unsustainable groundwater pumping in the Middle East, billions of pounds of government spending and other subsidies are harming the environment, says the first cross-sector assessment for more than a decade. The government support, equal to 2% of global GDP, is directly working against the goals of the Paris Agreement. And draft targets on reversing biodiversity loss, the research on explicit subsidies found, effectively financing water pollution, land subsistence, and deforestation with state money. Yeah, exactly right. And this is exactly why my policies say we stop doing this. Not only do we stop giving subsidies that lead to this environmental damage, but we also increase the taxes upon those companies that do as such. And not only do, okay, let's go over this. Is that in here? Yes, it is. You have to look at the economies for the common good. Okay, that's not. Where is it? It's gotta be in here. There we go. Sustainable businesses. Okay. There we go. So this is how we would look. How my plan kind of looks at this. Let's go ahead and look at this really quick. Right. So support climate journalism. Oh, what the fuck are you doing? Oh my god. There we go. Sorry. So how we deal with companies that are polluting. And it's okay. Sustainable business. This is B. Let's find where this is. So I can share this. Why is this not B here? Regenerative open source circular economies. There you go. I got it. I'll go ahead and share this for you so you can take a look at it. So, sustainable businesses. Nationwide business pollution evaluation. All companies I need to add this link to this one too. All companies and their processes must be evaluated as far as how much pollution they have done in the past and are doing now. They will have 1 year to create a 5-year plan to completely remediate all environmental damage caused directly or indirectly over the entirety of their operation and of their subsidiaries. Change the processes to completely prevent this in the future, facing increasing amount of taxes every year until such time as they have complied or be taken over by the government, and the CEOs, managers will be jailed. We need to create environmental certification and rating organization and rate them based on how well they are environmentally friendly, if they're regenerative, right? And if they do, if they're polluting, then they get a worse rating. And for some of these companies that are polluting, they wouldn't have access to like federal or local contracts. That'd be one way to really get this started. I don't go into huge detail here on that. But if you want to read about the economies for the common good aspect, I talk about that here. You can read about that. So yeah, those companies that are, we need to get rid of the subsidies for all these companies that are polluting, and then increase the taxes on them, and then keep them from getting access to federal, state, and local contracts. That'll starve them, and then they'll either change quickly or they will die. Okay. The authors, who are leading subsidies experts, say a significant portion of the 1.8 trillion could be repurposed to support policies that are beneficial for nature and a transition to net zero amid growing political divisions about the cost of decarbonizing the global economy. Yeah, so that's what my policies say. You get rid of all the subsidies for those who pollute, and you shift it to sustainable energy, sort of a thing, right? That's exactly what we need to be doing. And much like I say, there's the article, right? Trillion. Let's read this article. Trillions. There we go. So this article here, a study says transition to sustainable energy will make money back in 6 years. So it'll cost, what, 62 trillion to do this globally, I think. I'll go ahead and share this for you. But it'll save us $11 trillion a year in costs. So, I mean, there's no reason to not do it. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's a fucking no-brainer, right? No-brainer, given this math. So, part of that is you cut subsidies to polluters, and then you shift all that money to sustainable energy and environmental things. You also cut the U.S. military budget by 75%, and you drop that into sustainability and regenerative projects. Boom, that's basically, well, that's over $2 trillion here for us, for just for the United States alone, right there. Actually, no, because this is 1.8 trillion globally. So ours are, for both those together, that'll be a little over $1 trillion. The report calls for governments to agree a target to eradicate environmentally harmful subsidies by the end of the decade. At the end of the fucking decade? At the Biodiversity COP15 gathering in China later this year. It's COP17? I don't know how this makes sense. It should be COP17, because we just saw COP16 last year, right? 26? I don't even know. Let's look here. Yeah, COP26. Okay, so it'll be COP27 this year. COP26 was last year in November. So COP27 is this year. I don't know how they got this number. Really? This from this year? Yeah, it's from this year, so I don't understand that number. Where it is hoped a Paris Agreement for nature will be signed, and for companies to reveal the subsidies they receive as a part of environmental disclosure reporting. So again, much like I'll go and throw this in here for you so you can take a look at it. I talk about the Glasgow Climate Pact and how fucking ridiculous it is, right? And how it means basically nothing because the agreements have no teeth, no enforceability. You know, I bitch about it in my policies and I bitch about it here. And at last year's event, COP26, the largest demographic that was represented was fossil fuel industry. That tells you anything about what COP27 is going to be here in the next month. Cristiana Figueres, who was head of the UN Climate Change Convention when the Paris Agreement was signed, welcomed the research. She said the subsidies were creating huge risk for the businesses receiving them. Nature is declining at an alarming rate, and we have never lived on a planet with so little biodiversity, she said. Harmful subsidies must be redirected towards protecting the climate and nature rather than facing our own extinction, financing our own extinction. True statement. Fossil fuel industry, 620 billion. The agricultural sector, 520 billion. Water, 320 billion. And forestry, 155 billion. Account for the majority of the 1.8 trillion, according to the report. No estimate for mining, believed to cause billions of dollars of damage to the ecosystem every year, could be derived. Okay, yeah, that's a huge difference. Huge problem. So, okay, so this is globally, mind you, not just the United States. So 620 billion, yeah, that needs to go away, and then also need to tax them. As a part of increasing taxes on the fossil fuel industry, you also need to engage in price regulation too, because otherwise they'll shift it onto the consumer, and that they can't do. Agricultural sector, we talk about the sign policies too, right? Do I talk about price regulation? Let me talk. Yeah, okay. What the fuck are you doing? I do talk about that in here. Price controls. That needs to be done too, yep. So the agricultural sector, I talk about that in here as well. When it comes to sustainability, we need to shift to, let's go, vertical. There we go. So here, shifting to vertical farming. Here we go. So the money that is going to the agricultural sector, especially the ones that are cutting down trees and things of that nature, it needs to be shifted over here to vertical farming. The government could use that money, instead of subsidizing those things, to subsidize the creation of vertical farms, large-scale vertical farms, which use 10% of the land and 10% of the water. They could literally buy up farmland, take 10% of it, put in a giant, multi-story vertical farm, even have some of it go below ground, which is a good idea it's expensive, this is something that the government needs to be funding and subsidizing anyhow. And then take the other 90% of the land and rewilding it. I mean, you still make significantly more food because you're able to produce food year-round, and it's cheaper to do it this way, and then you also gain all that green space back. I mean, there's such a huge impact. Now, obviously, we can't do this for everything, all foods. Some, at least at this point, we haven't figured out how to grow all foods indoors. Like, there's some of the larger crops which might have to be grown outside, but even with that, the majority of our crops can be grown indoors in vertical farming, and there will be some that we'll have to do outside, which that'll be a thing. But still, the gains we get from all this, we get to hyper-localize food so it's closer to the people that it serves, and it reduces the carbon footprint, uses 10% of the water, uses 10% of the land, so we can rewild it. And this helps to increase the resilience of our food generation process because it's indoors and it's a vertical farm and it's not outdoors and being roasted, right? Especially if you have them underground, it's much more efficient And then if you can get really big into a circular economy when it comes to food and that stuff. And also, we can also plan for dealing with feeding climate refugees that are coming, not just from our country, but from other countries as well. So, yeah, that's what we do with that one. In forestry, I'm not sure what that is. All right, lack of transparency between governments and recipients means the true figure is likely to be much higher, as is the implicit cost of harmful subsidies. Last year, an International Monetary Fund report found the fossil fuel industry benefited from subsidies worth $5.9 trillion in 2020. Yeah, see, look at this. And I'm assuming this is globally. If you want to talk about the 62, like 5.9 trillion here, and this is 1.8 trillion, right? So this is like globally, this is 7.7. That's almost $8 trillion right there. We start doing the right thing, and if we could have been doing this a decade ago, and we could have had that 62 trillion done over a decade. But the vast majority of this figure comes from the hidden costs of failing to make polluters pay for the deaths they cause in global heating. Right, so this is the issue of negative externalities. So capitalism privatizes the profits while socializing the costs, and part of those costs is pollution and cancer and deaths caused by the pollution and people dying, right? Because we talk about that in here, like how many people die each year due to pollution. Hold on, let's go here. Yeah, here we go. So 8.7 million lives, 8.7 million people die every year due to pollution. Yeah, there we go. So that's how many lives we're going to save by the negative externalities from pollution. Now, this isn't just fossil fuel industry, this is all the other industries as well. Agro is a big polluter, right? I mean, there's a lot of pollution going on. So, and I think there's a study, and I need to find the study, that if we took into account if businesses had to pay for the negative externalities, this stuff here, pay for climate change, pay for pollution, pay for the deaths caused by it, there would be no industry that could be profitable today. And this is one of the issues, of course, with capitalism. Because it's about profit, not about creating a world that's sustainable or creating a world that's good for people. Subsidy reform allows us to improve price signals so that we are not protecting income in more polluting industries, said Doug Koplow, founder of the organization EarthTrack, which monitors environmentally harmful subsidies, and co-author of the report along with Ronald Steenblick, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's former special counsel for fossil fuel subsidy reform. It creates a space for alternative and cleaner forms of energy to enter the marketplace. Yeah, exactly right, because those subsidies go towards sustainable energy. They go towards vertical farms. They go to stuff that we actually need to be doing, otherwise we fucking end up going extinct, which is going to happen in the next 1 to 200 years. The draft target in the UN Biodiversity Agreement for this decade calls for $500 billion a year in subsidies to be reformed, but the B Team and Business for Nature, which supported the research, have said this must be strengthened. The world has never met a target on halting biodiversity loss, and the failure to act on subsidies was highlighted as a major issue from last decade's targets. Right, and this is $500 billion a year is fucking anemic. I mean, $500 billion a year per country? Okay, sure, now we're talking. 500 billion a year per continent? Something like that. I mean, this is 500 billion is nothing. Like I said, if your climate bill isn't trillions, if it's not at least, I say over $10 trillion, then you're voting for human extinction. That's just the way it is. So 500 billion that's laughable. Especially on a global level. Especially when we look at that, thing where it's trillions, right? Oh, let's go back over here. 62 trillion globally. Yeah, 62 trillion globally to shift to sustainable energy. Eva Zabi, executive director of business for Nature, said businesses were often unaware of the extent of explicit and implicit subsidies they benefit from, but could use their influence to call for change. As many businesses are benefiting from these environmentally harmful subsidies. This cannot be a taboo topic. We need to speak using facts and understand where the financial flows are going, he said. Typically, the subsidies were established with good intentions in mind, like making the 1% richer. We need to level the playing field because right now some are benefiting from a head start when it should be the other way around. It's a problem. Last year, a UN report found almost 90% of subsidies given to farmers every year are harmful, damaging people's health, fueling the climate crisis, destroying nature, and driving inequality by excluding smallholder farms. Elizabeth Rema, the UN's biodiversity head, said the report was critically important. The report highlights how redirecting, repurposing, or eliminating subsidies could make an important contribution to unlocking $711 billion required each year to halt and reverse the loss of nature by 2030, as well as the cost of reaching net zero emissions. Again, so net zero emissions, if you're talking net zero emissions, you're talking, anyone who says that should not be listened to. Because net zero is just voting, because we're already in climate change, right? We can't be net zero. Net zero is not enough. We need to be negative. We need to be negative a shitload, because currently carbon is going like this. And if we want to have it stop doing it, we need to be carbon negative so we can start pulling it down. And it will take decades, if not hundreds of years of us being carbon negative to turn that down. Turn that climate damage down. And so it's ridiculous. Okay, so there's that. Questions, comments before we move on? What is this? Why is this? I don't know what this is here for. I must have clicked on it or something. Okay, yeah, I accidentally clicked on that. All right, so, well, here's this. All right, so this next one's from the BBC. This is from 2 days ago. Revealed huge gas flaring emissions. Huge gas flaring emissions never reported. Part of the fossil fuel industry, specifically, the gas and oil industry here. I'm gonna get my, hold on a second, I'll get my flippers on. So let me know if you can hear the fan. I've got my ceiling fan going too. Hopefully you can't hear it because I have a shotgun mic, but I don't know. Okay, major oil companies are not declaring a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions, a BBC investigation has revealed. The BBC found millions of tons of undeclared emissions from gas flaring at oil fields where BP, Eni, ExxonMobil, Chevron, and Shell work. Flaring of natural gas is the wasteful burning of excess gas released during oil production. The company said their reporting method was standard industry practice. Well, why would the industry actually want to report things correctly? Especially when the industry and the lobbyists control the government, which control how things are reported, right? They can fight this tooth and nail, keep it from going, much like they fought sustainable energy, how they fought against mass transit, right? Just a second here. Oh, Pandora Mask. Thank you so much for your follow. Appreciate that. Welcome. Let me know if my sound is okay, because I always have problems with my sound. How are you doing today? Covering environmental stuff, because environmental stuff is important. I do a lot of climate change, sustainable energy, sustainable tech sort of a thing on this channel. If you go with my Discord, yeah, I was active duty 92 to 98. I was in training 92 to 94, and then I was in Norfolk 94 to 98. So the first 2 years we were in dry dock for the refit of the USS Enterprise, and then 96 to 98 we were active, and we were in the Persian Gulf, in Iraq, and I think we were responsible for the initial bombing of Iraq in 95, 96 when we were there. So yeah, I did one Mediterranean cruise. A lot of them are, and there are reasons for that, but many of us aren't, you know, because of the being a part of the military, right? It's part of the brainwashing, unquestioningly following orders, right? So it's a part of the systems of control for the capitalist class and stuff like that. So yeah, many are, because it's kind of part of it. Yep, many are. Yep. And that's what you find pretty much in any of the industries that are systems of control. They'll be conservative, right? Police, military, banking, government, right? Any of those positions. Church, that's another system of control as well. Most of them will be right-leaning because of the nature of the industry as a part of the systems of control within capitalism. Yeah, but there's definitely a bunch of us out there that are against. Many are leftists, yeah, but most of them are capitalists as well, which makes them right-leaning. I mean, at most they're center-left, but not really left-leaning, because, you know, it still requires capitalism. Like Andrew Yang, right? Andrew Yang is you cannot be a leftist and be a capitalist. I mean, you can't support capitalism and be a leftist, because leftism is inherently against capitalism. It's anti-capitalist and racist, anti-colonialist, right? All these things which are capitalist or supported and required by capitalism in general. But like Andrew Yang is a good example of that. I mean, he wants to do some changes, but he's still a capitalist. So he approaches it from the capitalist perspective, and Andrew Yang and I have a lot of similar policies, but there are definitely places where him being a capitalist is kind of creating the problem here. Maybe free market, but you can be a social democrat, progressive capitalist, and do the thing. Yeah, because they operate within they operate within capitalism, right? Yeah, you can be left-leaning, definitely, most definitely. But like for me, leftism is anti-capitalist, anti all these things, right? Anti all these things that are inherent to the harms of capitalism. Yeah, definitely. At some point, I'd like to see if Andrew Yang would come on here and we could talk about his policies and stuff. It'd be pretty. Well, it depends. It depends on how you want to talk about it. For me, leftist is of course anti-capitalist and anti all that stuff, but left-leaning meanings, yeah, like you're left-leaning on social programs and all that sorts of stuff, but you may not be completely 100% against capitalism, right? It's more or less ends up being the difference between anti-capitalist and not, at least for me. If you're interested, this is my blog. I've been blogging about politics for a decade. This is my policy site. I've had my own policy site out here since 2019. Yes, I identify as eco-humanist, right? I think that's what I identify as. Yeah, eco-humanist. Yeah, what got me, I was not. I was raised Methodist, but we stopped going to church when I was like 8 or 9 or something like that. So I only really had to know what Christmas was, the Lord's Prayer, Easter, other than that, my parents didn't brainwash me or my sister into religion or politics. Both my whole family is right leaning, right wing, definitely. So I was spared that. Yeah, it's something. It's more center. At least in my church here, I mean, they were struggling with the gay marriage issue, which if you struggle with the gay marriage issue, it's kind of it's you're not that left, but they're more centrist and somewhat left leaning. Yeah, definitely. And what got me into politics was the gay marriage issue, liberal as in not traditional. Yeah. I get what you mean. I'm just being, pedantic. What got me into politics was the gay marriage issue. And that's what started me, 2005, 2006, around there. And so I first started studying Christian history and philosophy and Christian theology, and also getting into social sexual issues and that. I'm not gay. I'm married. I got a wife. I've got a kid. He's 13. And not gay, but yes. So that's what got me into it first, and then after like 2010 or so, I got into minimum wage, capitalism, U.S. imperialism, and then I kind of went off from there into where I'm at. Oh, where are you from, by the way? I'm from Wisconsin, South Central Wisconsin, in the U.S. Atheist philosopher Ayn Rand. Well, Ayn Rand is New Orleans. Okay, cool. Atlanta. How's the hurricane been for you? You okay down there? Ayn Rand is a right-wing nut job, so she can go fuck herself. And she's one of the primary... You're fine? Okay, good. She's one of the, goddesses of libertarianism. And libertarianism is highly problematic as a right-leaning, somewhat dichotomous. Some will be socially left but fiscally conservative, and you can't be fiscally conservative while being socially liberal because you need the money to support those social programs. Right-wing philosophy over politics, which is why she denied being called libertarian. Yeah, well, it doesn't matter what she says, what her actual values put her as. It's somewhere near libertarian, if I remember correctly. I haven't really studied her, just what I've picked up over the years. We can always say that politics are philosophies, right? It's a political philosophy. Ayn Rand, bad. Bad. One of the big reasons why our politics are so messed up for work. So many young people read it and then they begin to see some logic in there, then they start going into becoming sociopaths and not caring about the harm that they cause people. But she rejected anti-war. Okay, that makes her definitely right-leaning, and anarchist parts of libertarianism. Okay, and also wanted to integrate her philosophy of objectivism, where as many libertarians and Christians are altruists. Okay. Well, yeah, if you reject anti-war and anarchism, okay, sure. And if you reject altruism, you're definitely not left-leaning in any sense of the word. But yeah, I don't know that much about her. But yeah, she's not good, whatever she is. However she wants to label herself, or anyone else wants to label her, she's bad. Been a very bad influence on, especially Americans, and on the right. And it's worshipping of her complete and total separation of individuals from the rest of. Are you not sure? I identify as a agnostic humanist. That's what I identify as, an agnostic humanist. I haven't really gotten into philosophy so much. I've wanted to, but I just haven't had time to get into it. There was a point where I was doing a little bit of reading on it, but I haven't really had time to get into it very deeply. Currently, I'm reading and writing on the Pleistocene and the Holocene and the Paleolithic and the Neolithic, and writing something titled Humanity's Journey Through Abundance and Scarcity and Back Again. So looking at scarcity as the cause of the issues we have, and putting that potentially as the introduction to my policies, looking at scarcity and abundance as, you know, how we came to where we are, and also how we can solve the problems that we have as a globalized civilization. How can you summarize your philosophy and how to use politics? Well, my policies go through it. So my policies are split up into 3 sections. The first part is the philosophical pillars, the philosophical foundations. Rejected many conservatives due to conservatives being religious and altruistic. Sure, I could see that. So if I look at my philosophy, it's right here, the 8 philosophical pillars for peace. Although I will be expanding this, at least I'm in the process of writing the expansion for it. And the first and most important part of my philosophical pillars is interdependence, which interdependence is specifically in the antithesis to capitalism, because capitalism requires separation. Capitalism is a disease of separation. Curly Bear, how you doing? You're usually about the half mark or something like that, but you're good. You got an hour left. It's good to see you. How you doing? So yeah, my interdependence is the key part of it, which stands antithetical to capitalism. So that's kind of where I start. The interdependence of humanity with itself, and the interdependence of humanity with the natural world, and from there it kind of goes sustainability, education, equity, justice and compassion, and science and technology. Actually, justice and compassion itself is antithetical to capitalism as well. I'm good. I was a little bit late getting started today because we're working on putting my daughter's bed together. And yeah, we're gonna go. I've got Dungeons and Dragons tomorrow, and then we're also gonna see my parents tomorrow for lunch as well. So it's yeah, and I'm working on writing. Go ahead and pop this up for you. This is a part of that that infographic talking about scarcity and abundance. I've been doing a lot of writing on this, and I'm on 36 pages. So the link is in Discord if you want to jump in and check it out. There's a lot. Well, I've done a lot of work on this. I wouldn't I don't know, how do you classify being an altruist? I guess part of altruism would be understanding that we are all interdependent. All harm in the world is a result of the denial of our mutual interdependence. Well, I don't necessarily. This is the problem with contemporary political philosophy, is it tends to be very dichotomous, like communism versus capitalism, and that's the only continuum you can play with. So it's really hard for me to. I don't identify on that axis, altruism versus selfishness. I identify in the axis of interdependence versus separation. Capitalism is distinctly about separation because it supports competition and exploitation, the murder of people for fun and profit, the murder of the environment for fun and profit. Whereas I support interdependence, which means that, well, you can't do those things because we are all interdependent. Yeah, that's where I would place it too, but it's a little different in the way it what drives it. Like humanity, as an individual, we are interdependent with each other and with the natural world. We're not above the natural world. We're a part of the ecosystem. And that is how we should think about things, and that's how we should drive things. Because Oh, okay, sure. I will keep that, and I will. Oh, A and red. Oh my God. Okay. All right, sure. I'll take a look at it. It'll be good to educate myself a little bit about her because I don't know much about her beyond she's bad. But thank you for sharing. Yes, interdependence, that's the core of my philosophies. And what I'm probably thinking about adding to my philosophical pillars is I'm probably going to upgrade sustainability to regenerative. Then I'm probably going to add change and entropy. What's the other one? Cosmic. That's it. That's right, cosmic. I don't like this word, but that's, yeah, the work is kind of here that I'm working on. Probably 12 of them. So when I talk about the cosmic, I talk about this from the standpoint of interdependence. This is something I've been writing about in my proposed humanity's terminal disease, the disease of interdependence, or the disease of separation. So all problems that humanity has can be separated into 4 categories of separation. An individual separation from the self, an individual separation from the rest of humanity, an individual separation from the natural world, or an individual separation from what I call the cosmic. I don't like that phrasing, but it kind of leans towards hard sciences and just education in general. So you consider your politics motivated by philosophical progressivism, context of progress. Sure. If you, along whichever axis, progressivism versus regressivism, sure. Progressivism is just that, regressive. But, I mean, Democrats aren't progressive, they're regressive because Democrats are center-right, they're conservatives. They are, if you're capitalist to your bones, you're a conservative party. And that's what Democrats are. So the axis I would use would be interdependence versus separation. That's really where it comes down to. Progressive change, yep. Conservatives, yep. Yep. Well, progressives, yeah. Well, it isn't necessarily change. It's not change for the sake of change. But change is a constant. Things are always changing, and denying that change and preventing change, much like just keeping tradition for the sake of tradition, doing things because that's just the way we've done them for hundreds of years, is a form of violence. It's a form of social violence. So it's, for me, it's not so much about, again, change versus stagnation. Something like Teddy Roosevelt and Benjamin Disraeli, who conservative progressives who support reform, but right, yep, exactly, yep, that's definitely a thing. Lyndon B. Johnson also was another one with his big thing that he did. Yep. Well, also regression is change. It's just a change backwards. Progressivism should be change forward, making things better, positive for others. I guess that's probably a better way to look at it. Regressivism versus progressivism. Negative, backwards progress, backwards change versus forward change. Would be FDR with his massive economic reforms. Okay, sure. Yep, that was huge. Is left wing or conservatism is right wing? Well, if your change is regressive, it's conservative. Yeah, any change that's regressive is conservative. That's just the way it is. I mean, Democrats are conservative, and the change that they do is negative. They're also conservative. If you want actual progress, actual forward or positive change, you have to look outside, at least in the United States, the two parties, because change that Democrats advocate for, or not advocate, because they punch left during electoral season, right? But then they vote right when they're in office. Towards massive change to shrink the size of government and cut taxes and social spending and regulations. Yeah. Well, right, but it's not. But they're regressive. They want to damage everything. The point of the Republican Party is to destroy progress, and it's the point of the Democratic Party to prevent progress and to keep progress from happening. But also, they also do stop progress as well. Or they enable regression to happen. So they are accomplices to the regressives, accomplices to the conservatives, because like looking at Roe versus Wade, they've had decades to codify Roe versus Wade, especially under Obama, right? I mean, well, it is about damage. Because everything they want to do is about destruction. It's about destroying progress. It's about regressing. It's about getting rid of progress. That's why it's regressive. Regressive means to go backwards. Progressive would mean to have progress. We need to go forward. I suppose I disagree with that empirically and morally. Okay, well, empirically the evidence would support me, because Republicans want to destroy progress. Roe versus Wade, destroy that. Left wing is the only way. Well, I would assume that you would assume that Democrats are left wing. They're not. Democrats are conservative as well. They're center right at best. They're conservatives. They're center right with better marketing, whereas Republicans are far right lunatic fringe, in the United States at least. On the federal level, we're talking. The United States has no major left-leaning party. Over 50% of the entire country has zero representation in government on the federal level. Actually, 90% of the people in this country don't have representation, because both parties work for the top, 10%. Democrats who are center. Democrats are not center to far left. They are center right at best. Sure they do. Well, if Republicans want to tear down what we've put together, right? That's getting rid of progress. They want to get rid of programs we've put together. That's backwards. That's getting rid of progress. Yeah. So you're completely wrong. Democrats are center right. I've got a blog post talking about lesser tools voting, which I get into these. They're not far left. AOC and company aren't far left. I mean, they're just left. So we have to look at this on the scale of the entire world. In the United States, the Democrats are basically the conservative party in Europe, and the Green Party is the left-leaning party in Europe. Our U.S. politics is so right-leaning. Right. Well, I wouldn't say most of the country. If you're a Republican and conservative, sure, you would definitely say far left. But that just shows you how fucking skewed our politics are, how right-leaning our politics are. Like I talk about that in here. I talk about that in here, don't I? Yeah, because we are unbridled capitalism. So see here, this is how fucked up our politics are. This is where we are. We're on the right. Whereas Europe actually has a left and a right, which is more conservative in many respects. They can be, yeah, they can be, definitely. There's always conservatism, and there's always people who want to destroy, and always people who want progress, and that's just a matter of how much political power they actually have. But by and large, U.S. politics is completely right-leaning. Oh, actually, if we look at right here, right? So here, We got Trump, Bush, far right, Clinton, center right, right? I mean, actual right leaning. And then Jill Stein is left, right? She's left. And then Sanders is center left at best. Like, I'm down here. I'm way the fuck down here. I'm actual far left. Sanders, AOC, they're center left at best in rhetoric. But currently, what they've done, the squad, is they voted. I mean, they voted for. They haven't voted against anything that's mattered. I mean, European moderates like Macron and Merkel are basically your average American Democrat. Well, no, because Macron and Merkel they're right-leaning. You can't just use two examples and say you're wrong. It's not the way it is. It's the larger scale of actual politics is right-leaning in the United States. We're right-leaning, period. That's just the way it is. Now, the squad does talk left, but they vote right. By our centrist. Okay, sure. Could be. I'm not familiar with their politics. So I can't really tell you. By saying, yeah. So, yeah, the United States is right-leaning in its politics. And there is no left-leaning representation. Again, with Sanders, the entire point of the Democratic Party. Like they say, the saying goes is that the Democratic Party is where social movements go to die. And that's what happened with Sanders and his movement. That's what what happened to the squad. Anyone who calls themselves leftist, I'm not that familiar with his politics, but he's supposed to be the Trump of Europe, so he's right. Of the average Democrat, I don't know. I'm not familiar with his policies. I assume he's far right wing, like Trump is, but again, they're right leaning. That's all that matters. Conservative and horrible. Oh yeah, so like here's another one, right? Left. So this is right. Yeah. Yep. So yeah. So they're neoliberals. So they're right leaning. They haven't given a single example of European politicians being left. I can't, because I haven't studied it specifically. I can't tell you specific people, right? Because I haven't studied that. That is what I have heard. That is what I've read. Do what you want. Do what you want, dude. No, I've got lots of reading. So let's look at Scotland. Look at what they have done for their Green Party and the amount of work that they've done in Scotland. That's the only specific thing I'm aware of. They've done some really amazing things in there. I don't know who they're. What you're telling me is if I don't know European politics, my opinion is not worth anything, and that's. I mean, that goes both ways. So, if you're gonna dismiss me out of hand, okay, you do that. But ultimately, European politics actually has a left and a right, whereas the United States doesn't. Where our politics is right over here. We could probably go here and see what they say. Maybe we can do that. Let's go to what is this? This is Political Compass. Political Compass Europe. Let's see what they say. Huh, look at this. It's all right leaning. That's funny. Okay, so well that's on that's not parties. We want parties here. Let's look at parties. Okay. Let's look at European parties. Hold on. European parties. That'll give us a better. Okay, let's check this out. All right leaning. Don't want that one. Table. No. What does this one do? Oh, that's small. Come on. Not easy to find. can't claim we're to the right of Europe if you can't give evidence. And like I said, I've read a lot about it. We are right-leaning. Again, I don't have... If I've written a post on it, then I'll have evidence. I haven't. This is not something I have studied and written a post on, so I don't have it. I can say it because it is what I have read. And that's been pretty much the consensus of people that have been on my channel as well. More geopolitical complications, since often right-wing parties support left-wing governments of allies and left-wing parties oppose left-wing governments of allies. Geopolitical allies. Well, it depends on what you mean by left-wing, because that's we have different understandings of what left-wing is. Someone would equate left-wing to socialist, as in Nazis. Nazis weren't left-wing. So it depends on what you mean by left-wing. Because again, U.S. isn't left. Green Party would be left-wing. I know there are issues like left-wing government of Israel. Left-wing government is supported by Western. Right. Well, Israel isn't left. Israel is a genocidal terrorist organization. There's nothing left-wing about Israel. Israel is a far, I mean, it's farther right than even the Republicans in the United States. I mean, at least Republicans are at least somewhat overt about wanting to engage in genocide against people of color, whereas Israel is overtly engaging in genocide. ADL, what is ADL? Something Defense League, right? Again, I said somewhat overt. And they are very overt in many ways about their systemic and structural racism and the things that... Yeah, Anti-Defamation League, yeah. They rate people who are... International Jewish, yeah, they're Jewish. So they're gonna be, yeah, they're... Anyone can disagree with anything. Israel is a genocidal terrorist organization. That's the way it is, regardless of what this Jewish organization might say, right? Liberal Zionism, sure. There can be liberal anything. Well, liberal is, within the larger context of politics, means neoliberal, meaning capitalist, which is center right. Okay, Zionism is, you can't be leftist and Zionistic. Zion is Zionism. Move for Jewish established now and development protection of a Jewish state that's now. Okay, yeah. If you're Zionist, you're right wing. Are categorized the majority of American Jews as left wing. Zionist. Okay, if you're left wing, you're not Zionist. You can't be Zionist. You can't be left wing and Zionist. I mean, it's just not according to the way I do things, right? There are progressive Jews, sure, there definitely is. It's very hard to be left wing, actually leftist in Zionist, because Zionist is inherently nationalistic, and nationalistic is it's also genocidal. No, not the way I talk about it, because nationalism is in and of itself a disease of separation. And you want to figure, if you look at the harms that we have throughout the world, nationalism is what separates us and what has countries thinking it's okay to murder people in other countries. These invisible lines that separate us are a large part of the problem. So, correct. According to my definition of left wing, yes, you can't be nationalistic and left wing. Correct. The Jewish people who might be progressive and vote Democratic but support Israel, it's not necessarily. Well, for my definition, yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But for the more right wing, for the right-wing politics in the United States, sure. You could be progressive, sure. It's hard to be progressive and support Israel because it's engaging in genocide. I would be very hard to support Israel as a genocidal terrorist organization and be progressive. Very difficult. Anyone who supports genocide in a terrorist organization is hard to be progressive. I mean, the United States is the largest terrorist organization in the world, so anyone who supports, especially United States foreign policy, isn't left-wing, not even a little bit, and can't be progressive either. I mean, honestly. Progressivism would be left-leaning, but would have capitalism in their thing too, but no. Pretty sure Jewish people don't do terrorism, it's disproportionately Islamic Christian. No, actually. Christianity... Oh, hold on. Well, no. Israel's engaging in genocide currently. You can't say that, but it's fairly... You're 100% incorrect, because Israel, a Jewish religious state, is engaging in genocide against the Muslims there, and they have taken over. Even the Christians don't do terrorism like Muslims do. And that doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't. Israel's secular. No, it's not. They are engaging in religiously motivated genocide. Anyone can say they're anything, but their actions say otherwise. They are a religious genocidal terrorist organization. Anyone, like the Nazis said they were socialist. I mean, they had some socialist policies, right? Sure, but their socialism only went as far as Aryans did. Cultural Zionism. Jewish state with its own secular Jewish, okay, blah blah blah. Yeah. So this is inherently harmful. I mean, I get from the long history of persecution that Jews have suffered. I get that. I get why people would support this, right? But from the longer term standpoint of creating a nation state, much like you're seeing now, right? They have a nation of Israel, and they're engaging in genocide, religiously focused genocide against Muslims. I mean, you're seeing the exact problem with nation states. I get this, and I understand it, but the long-term consequences of nationalism is death. Israel, it is not secular, it is definitely religious. A good portions of Israelis are atheists. Well, sure. I mean, again, you can point out individual things, but the individual things does not disprove the overall fact that they are a religiously motivated genocidal terrorist organization. It's like, right, climate change is not weather. Weather is local. Like having a snowball here and water over here does not disprove the overall pattern of climate change. It's mostly based off secular Jewish nationalism, but not religion. Well, we're okay. Sure, it's religion. It's religious. Okay, cultural or religion, either way, big fucking deal. It's Judaism, nationalism. They're still a genocidal. However you want to classify it, it's still a genocidal terrorist organization. If you want to split hairs, that isn't useful. They're still a genocidal terrorist organization. Culture, religion, who fucking cares where it comes from? They're engaging in genocide. They're engaging in genocide, which is also in taking over land that's not theirs, which is in violation of, whatever treaties. No, they don't have equal rights. They're being murdered. They're being murdered. So, okay. All this bullshit you're bringing up doesn't matter. Are you saying that Israel's not engaging in genocide against the Muslims there in Palestine? Right. Yes or no? Are they? Is Israel engaging in genocide? Israel's not engaging in any genocide. The liberal democracy? You're living in denial, dude. Seriously. You can use whatever labels you want, but they are engaging in genocide. Call Nazis socialists. Call Nazis the Nazi Germany socialist or a democracy, but they're still engaged in genocide. Call Israel a democracy. Call it cultural Zionism, culturally Jewish, but they're still engaging in genocide. Whatever labels you choose doesn't get rid of the fact that they're engaging in genocide against the Muslims in Palestine. Yes. It doesn't matter who's engaging in genocide, they're still doing genocide. Now the Jewish state is not engaging in genocide on the scale that Nazis are doing, right? They don't have the ability, they have not contemporarily had the ability to engage in the genocide at the level that the Nazis were. But genocide is a genocide regardless of who's doing it. Even if the Jewish peoples suffered from genocide, they can still do genocide. They are doing genocide. Genocide is genocide no matter who's doing it. No matter how you want to label it. The United States is responsible for supporting a genocidal terrorist organization in Israel. The United States is responsible for genocide of the indigenous populations, of the African populations as well. And a whole post I've started on that sort of a thing. Well, what specific ethnic group is being genocided by Muslims? Muslims in Palestine? And now you're going to start splitting hairs again. It doesn't matter, dude. Again, like I said, you're splitting hairs, so you don't have to deal with the actual what's going on. Here, Israel's a genocidal terrorist organization engaging in genocide against the Muslim people within Palestine. Your hair splitting isn't going to get rid of the fact that they're engaging in genocide. That's the way it is. Look at how many people are slaughtered by Syria. Yes, I agree completely. Syria, Palestine, they've got the slave trade done by Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration in Libya, right? Oh yeah, definitely. Sudan, Israel, yep. Those are still, yes, that's happening too. Yep, all those things, if the United States actually cared about human rights, those things would be stopped. The United States would be BDSing the shit out of Israel. And be looking to stop all the slaughter in these countries that you're talking about. Yep, 100% agree. But that still doesn't mean that what Israel is doing is not genocide. It is. I mean, Syrian government is the one who's doing the genocide. Sure. Just like the Israeli government is engaging in genocide. Who's doing it is irrelevant. It's still genocide, regardless of who's doing it. Regardless of whether they were victims of genocide themselves or not, they're still genocide. And I'm mixed on the BDS thing because typically when you talk about sanctions, it's the people that are hurt. So I don't know what the ultimate answer is dealing with countries like Israel who are engaging in, or large-scale terrorist organizations murdering others. I don't know what the answer is. I'm hoping someone at some point give me some better policies for it, because I have BDS in my policies, but I don't know what the alternate for that would be. That wouldn't hurt the people. Not that people aren't part of the problem, they are. On some of the scale at least, but I don't know. Where's South Africa during Israel apartheid? So-called Israel Apartheid Week began in South Africa. Our friends from South African Union. Jewish students have an important merit. Pride Zionist. Yeah, okay, this doesn't prove anything. You're a proud Zionist. They're Jews that support genocide. Okay. No, okay, they're against all forms of hatred. Okay, sure. That doesn't just prove anything, dude. It doesn't change the fact that the Israeli government is engaging in genocide. You can point a little this and that, but that doesn't change what Israel is doing. It's just like having a snowball doesn't disprove climate change. I don't think they support genocide against everyone. I don't care what they think they would support. What they are actually doing is genocide. How about we move on to something that can actually get us somewhere, because this is not going to get us anywhere, because you can't. And you're a genocide denier, and we can't get beyond that. Propaganda, yep. So you have an article on genocide. No, I'm not gonna look that up, because the level of denial required, I can find plenty on that. I mean, okay. Oh, I can't spell. Well, there's been risks of the community genocide, human rights allegations, okay. Oh, what was it? Palestinian genocide, slow motion genocide. I mean, there's plenty here. All you have to do is look. All you have to do is look. You can actually get better quality reporting there than you can just about anywhere here in the United States. But sure, whatever. Handpick whatever you want, go out and look for the articles, and then go ahead and read up on it. Alright, so we're gonna move on from that, and we're gonna finish reading this. I'm gonna throw this in chat for Girly Bear. We just started this. Huge gas flaring emissions never reported. Major oil companies are not declaring a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions, a BBC News investigation has revealed. Alright, the BBC found millions of tons of undeclared emissions. Oh my god. 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 Pain. Climate change skeptic. Okay. Yes, exactly. So he's funded by the right wing. He's funded by fossil fuel industry. Yeah. No. I can't even. Just there's no moral case for fossil fuels. There's zero moral case for it. Check out my policies. I go through that. You would take, what did they say, $62 trillion to shift to completely sustainable energy to undo the, to shift us to sustainable energy to get us off the fossil fuels. It's so, here, you read this, Extreme. Well, because you're a right-winger. If you deny climate change, you deny science. You're a right-winger. So, read stuff based in science, based in reality. I've had someone else share that book as well, and it's just like, seriously, dude, get some compassion. Start caring about people and the harm caused by others. In order to be conservative, you have to be a sociopath. Democrats are sociopathic, Republicans are very sociopathic, Libertarians are sociopaths because they harm people. They did. They were an important part of the Industrial Revolution. Sure, definitely. Yeah, I know you're conservative. I know that. I can tell by the arguments we're having and the fact that you deny climate change. Regardless of whether or not they were a part of the Industrial Revolution and and factories, it doesn't change that it caused climate change. It doesn't change anything. Again, just because they were useful in the Industrial Revolution to expand humans' technological advancement, well, if you're posting fossil fuels are moral good or whatever, you are. You're just not saying you are, right? But the amount of damage done, which we've known for decades. No, we've known about climate change since the late 1830s. Known about it for that long. Obviously, we couldn't just get rid of fossil fuels then as a part of the change, but in the early 1900s, mid 1900s, we definitely could have started shifting away from it, at least a little bit. It wasn't probably until the last 50 years where we could really get into sustainable energy and things of that nature, like when Jimmy Carter put the passive solar thermal heaters on the White House or some shit. It's not just the fossil fuels are that bad. They are, and fossil fuels increase the standards of living compared to No, that's not. That's fucking stupid. Dude, humanity is going extinct in the next 200 to 300 years. Climate change is happening. It's a thing. We are in the end of days. Without radical levels of change on the level of the 62 trillion, as was talked about in that study, shifting sustainable energy and doing everything we can to stop the emission of fossil fuels and the greenhouse gases, humanity is fucked. We are so fucked, it's not even funny. So fucked. Anyone who says otherwise... Okay, you enjoy that. Have a great Saturday. Stay safe, stay COVID free. Alright, so that was fun. Alright, so the BBC found millions of tons of undeclared emissions from gas flaring at oil fields where BP, Eni, ExxonMobil, Chevron, and Shell work. Flaring of natural gas is the wasteful burning of excess gas released during oil production. The company said their reporting method was standard industry practice. Okay, so what I was bitching about earlier when I started reading this is that, sure, standard industry practice, but the reporting method was standard industry. So who writes the laws? The fossil fuel industry writes the laws which allow them to not declare burning, what do they call it? Flaring as part of their pollution. So this doesn't really mean anything. This is just an admission that the admission of the corruption inherent to the government and how much control that the fossil fuel industry has over the government. Flared gases emit a potent mix of carbon dioxide, methane, and black soot, which pollute the air and accelerate global warming. The BBC has also found high levels of potentially cancer-causing chemicals in Iraqi communities near oil fields where there is gas flaring, of course. These fields have some of the highest levels of undeclared flaring in the world, according to our findings. Yeah, of course, the United States was there. I wonder how many U.S. companies actually own those fields, or are at least profiting from the oil fields in Iraq from the invasion. And one of the great advantages possibly to being in Iraq is the lack of regulation. Being able to murder the people there that live there by flaring. In response, David Boyle, UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and the Environment, compared these communities to modern sacrifice zones. Yep. Areas where profit and private interest are prioritized over human health and rights and environment. Yep, that's exactly right. Yep, and that's very much... We have another article talking about that exact thing right here, right? Yeah, right here. Sacrifice zones, where fossil fuel industry the white people can NIMBY fossil fuels outside of white areas, but the pollution and fossil fuels can be thrown into communities of color. Yep. BP in oil field where cancer is like the flu. Is that another article? Yep, that's another article. That's awesome. Good stuff. Deadly impact of the oil giants' toxic air pollution on children and the planet is revealed in this BBC News Arabic investigation from the front line of Climate Change in Iraq. The documentary is available to watch now on BBC iPlayer, UK only, and is only being broadcast on BBC World News at Saturday, 1 October. Oh, okay, look at that. Companies have long recognized the need to eliminate all but emergency flaring. BP, Eni, ExxonMobil, Chevron, and Shell are committed to a 2015 World Bank pledge to declare an end routine flaring by 2030. What the in Shell's case by 2025. Yeah, seriously, this should be ended like right now. It should have been ended a decade ago. These but the companies say that where they have contracted with another company to run day-to-day operations, it is that other firm's responsibility to declare flaring emissions. Right, exactly. And this is how they can cop out of it, by having their subsidiaries and contracts and stuff going back and forth so that they don't have to be compliant, and they can still not take the overhead to deal with, or to not deal with flaring. Or they don't deal with the overhead to deal with not flaring. Such fields are a major part of oil production, accounting for 50% of these 5 companies' portfolios on average, of course. However, through months of analysis, the BBC found dozens of oil fields where these operators are not declaring the emissions either, meaning no one is. Using World Bank flare tracking satellite data, we were able to identify the emissions from each of these sites. We estimate that in 2021, almost 20 million tons of CO2 equivalent went unreported from these flares. That is equal to the greenhouse gas emissions of that 4.4 million cars would produce in a year. In response, all 5 firms said that the approach to reporting emissions only from the sites they directly operate was standard industry practice. Right, exactly. And that's exactly what I was saying, right? Because the oil fields and stuff in Iraq are not technically theirs, and they contract with them or buy or whatever, that they don't have to be compliant and they can just get away with whatever, right? So much like when we talk about my policies, specifically dealing with like fossil fuel industry, we need to hold these fossil fuel companies responsible for the damage that they cause directly and indirectly from the way they do business, which means dealing with, they need to be held responsible for the way that their subsidiaries and people that they contract with do. In the case like this, these sites in Iraq which are doing flaring, these companies, these US companies would be held responsible for that because they are contracting with someone who's doing that and they need to pay for it. And then also when you look at how to deal with these companies, you look at increasing taxes on fossil fuel industries for the pollution they do and for how many people they harm. Like, you hold them accountable for all the negative externalities of them doing business directly and indirectly. Shell and Eni additionally said that they do give an overall emissions figure which includes flaring from non-operated sites, but said this is not broken down or included in their World Bank pledge to cut emissions. Of course not. A BBC News Arabic investigation indicates that flaring increases the risk of some cancers for people living near oil fields in Iraq. Yep. People living in some of the world's biggest oil fields in Basra, southeast Iraq, Rumaila, West Kurna, Zubair, Ran Omar, have long suspected that childhood leukemia is on the increase and that flaring is behind it. And of course it is. In the Basra region, new cases of all types of cancer rose by 20%, Jesus Christ, between 2015 and 2018, according to a leaked Iraq Health Ministry report seen by BBC News Arabic that blames air pollution. Naturally. BP and Eni are the lead contractors of Rumaila and Zubair oil fields, respectively, but as they are not operators, they do not declare the emissions, neither do the site's operators. Technicalities. Technicalities allowing the murder of innocent people is a negative externality. Profits are privatized, costs are socialized. BBC News Arabic worked with environment and health experts near the 4 sites in 2021 to test for cancer-causing chemicals associated with flaring over 2 weeks. The air tests indicated levels of benzene, yeah, that's a big problem, linked to leukemia and other blood disorders, reached or exceeded Iraq's national limit in at least 4 places. Urine samples we collected from 52 children indicated that 70% had elevated levels of 2-naphthol, a form of the possibly cancer-causing substance naphthalene. Dr. Manuela Orjuela Grimm, professor of childhood cancer at Columbia University, said that children have strikingly high levels. This is concerning for their health and suggests they should be monitored closely. When she was 11, Fatima Fala Najem was diagnosed with a type of blood and bone cancer called acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Exposure to benzene can increase the risk of people developing this condition. Fatima lived with her parents and 6 siblings near Zubair oil field, where Eni is the lead contractor. Neither Eni nor Zubair's operating company declared flaring emissions there. For health reasons, Iraqi law prohibits flaring within 6 miles of people's homes. 6 miles? That's it? But the flares in Zubair blaze almost continuously, just 1.6 miles from the family's front door. People need to be in jail. Seriously. Fatima drew the fiery flames that surrounded her home during her chemotherapy treatment. She told us she enjoyed watching them at night and came to normalize them. But for her father, watching her get sick was like being on fire without being able to extinguish it. Fatima died last November as her family desperately sought a bone marrow transplant. She was 13. Murdering children for fun and corporate profit. That's capitalism. As for a response, Eni said it strongly rejects any allegation that its own activities are endangering the health of the Iraqi people. Eni said that it does not contractually have responsibility for flaring in Zubair. Rumaila oil field, 25 miles away, flares more gas than any other site in the world, according to BBC calculations, enough to power nearly 3 million UK homes a year. BP is the lead contractor. It helped establish and now supervise the operator, Rumaila Operating Organization. Neither declares any flaring from the oil field. Yeah, so here you've got Western fossil fuel organizations who are benefiting from the invasion of Iraq by allowing unethical business operation within Iraq and taking the profits from it while, again, socializing the harm of it. Yay, capitalism! Woohoo! ROO's operating standards, which BP signed, says those who are impacted by pollution levels that exceed national limits are legally entitled to compensation. But Ali Hussein Jalud, a 19-year-old leukemia survivor, says that he and his father were met with silence when they sought compensation from BP in 2020 and 2021. Of course, because they've got the Iraqi government to stonewall them, they've got the oil companies there in Iraq to stonewall them, and then good luck getting an international payment from someone for something that another company has done. BP said, "We are extremely concerned by the issues raised by the BBC. We will immediately review those concerns, and we will immediately find that we are not at fault here. It's these other companies." Or actually, they'll say that things are operating according to established laws and standards, right? On the leaked report on cancer in the Basra area, Iraq's oil minister Ihsan Abdul-Jabbar Ismail told us we instructed all the contracted companies operating in the oil field to uphold international standards. Oh yeah, wink wink, nudge nudge, right? If all the natural gas flared globally were captured and used, it could replace more than 9/10 of Europe's gas imports from Russia, based on figures from the International Energy Agency. Look at this devastation. Actually, no, Iraq isn't green. I wonder how much of this is from the devastation. Oh God, look at this. Look at those plumes. Look at that. Jesus Christ. Yikes. Aerial shot of West Kurna oil field. And it's just like, it gets up in the environment, then it gets blown all over the place. It'd be like 10, 20 miles. There shouldn't be any flaring. There should not be any flaring at all. Any flaring is just messed up. Capturing the gas can be initially expensive and technically difficult, according to the World Bank. It estimates that ending all routine flaring could cost as much as $100 billion. And what? Not our problem. How many people are you murdering, and how much how much are you contributing to climate change? Go fuck your profits and fix it. Mark Davis, chief executive of Capterio, which advises oil companies on capturing flared gas, told the BBC that countries like Norway have shown it is possible to help with strong regulation. Yeah, you fucking force them and to say, fucking suck it up, do it, or go out of business. Really that simple. Okay, we'll read this one too. It's not that long and has something to do with the oil field there. And then we'll be done. Okay, BP in oil field where cancer is rife. I'll go ahead and share this one. This is from 1 day ago. When was this one done? This was recent too, wasn't it? Yeah, this is 2 days ago. Okay, so this one is kind of a follow-up from it. All right. Look at that. Look at that air. Ugh. It's criminal. Oh, okay, so this is another article on the same thing. Fatima's father and his sisters watched the toxic smoke from the flares near their home. Okay, so this is about the same child, at least in the bottom. This is Esme Stallard. Owen wrote this one. Yeah, it's the same authors. This is in Science, and this was in Science too. Okay, we won't read this one because it's the same. It's gonna be the same. Is it the same article? Hold on. No, it's not the same article. Same stuff covered. How long is this? This one is gonna be pretty long. Okay. I'll go ahead and share this one so you can read it if you like. We're not going to start another article, but we'll save this one for next time. No. All right. Ooh, actually, let's do this. Let's watch the Ayn Rand video. I'm curious about this. Said he's right wing. Yeah, okay, so he's Ayn Rand. Let's see what she believes, because I don't really know.
Objectivism. It's a guide to living here. Developed by this writer. Wondering who needs a philosophy? She answered that. To deal with real life, we need a view of the world and our place in it. Now, some people have strong opinions on objectivism. It's a philosophy that's controversial because it advocates selfishness and says altruism is evil. But we'll get back to that.
Oh my God. It's hard to believe that anyone can print this with a straight face. That is just okay. Let's see what they have. Let's see them make their case.
Rand's philosophy looks something like this. It starts with the idea that reality is objective. The universe is what it is, not what we want it to be. And wishing otherwise won't make it so.
It's nihilistic. I mean, things are the way they are now, but we have zero ability to change anything, so why even try? Problem one. In the previous one showed that capitalism was on the outside, which is...
Next, it states that our reason is all we have, and all we need, for understanding the world around us. And if reason is an absolute, you can't accept contradictions. It also says, your highest moral purpose should be the pursuit of your own selfish happiness.
Okay, that's... Now, this could be, if this is approached properly, this could be okay. Much like we talked about in here. What is it? Where is it? Altruism. It's there's this Kurzgesagt. Altruism. Altruism. It's a video. Great video. Come on. Oh, you son of a bitch. I put that. Come on. want to say it's loud. Where is it? Egotistic altruism. Okay, let's. Egotistic altruism. Here it is. Selfish argument for making the world a better place. If you've watched this before on my channel, this is an amazing video. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it again. If she approaches it like this, sure, I'll get behind it. But it's not going to be because she's conservative, she's libertarian. But yeah.
Now, selfishness can be misinterpreted. It doesn't mean exploit others for your own gain. It means realize your highest potential by pursuing rational ends and live in harmony with others by respecting their right to their own life and happiness. The result of this philosophy is a life of reason, purpose, self-esteem, a philosophy for living on Earth.
If you know that this life is all that you have, wouldn't you make the most of it?
There. Right. Not enough in here to really comment on, but there are some. I have to do a lot more reading on this to really comment on it, I guess. All right. Had an exciting and eventful stream time. It's 5 o'clock. Any last questions, comments, or suggestions before I call this a day? Both the daughter and wife are gone for a while. Actually, they've gone for most of the night, but so I've got some time here. Hopefully I'll get my blog post updated with some of these links here, because I definitely want to do that. Anyone have any crazy plans this weekend? I know I've got D&D, Dungeons & Dragons tomorrow night, and then I'll see my parents tomorrow for lunch, which will be good. My father was sick last week. Hopefully he's recovered from that. Chores, right? Yeah, we put my daughter's bed together this morning, so I've got to clean that whole mess up. And we got it from Overstock, and the wood was split on kind of the top part of it, and we requested a replacement, and they sent us a whole replacement, and it's that is split. Then another part of the wood on one of the other things is split, so we just said fuck it. So got to clean up from that mess from this morning. Yeah, I have some chores to do too. I clean that stuff up. Got to do laundry. I think is a big thing. Yeah, I'm not happy, but it went together well this morning. It was pretty easy. But yeah, the wood is split a little bit, and I'm not sure how long it's gonna last. Got the new bed frame for her, but we'll see. You're straightening tool? Oh, okay. Ooh, that sounds like fun. Yeah, laundry, picking that stuff up. I think that's all I have. Is that all I have? I think that's all I have. Yeah, I'll do some more writing, and I will work on getting some more of these links up here and over here put into my blog posts. So, good luck with your straightening. Hopefully your straightening your tool closet goes well. Tools can be kind of fun to arrange. Unfortunately, I don't have that many tools. I have just a small drawer in our entry area where I've got some stuff, and I put it there, and that's it. Although the wife ends up usually absconding with many of them, taking them to the studio. And I get cranky because I can't find it. Yeah, we'll do. When they eventually get home tonight, I'll definitely say Girly Bear says hi. And I'm really happy you were able to make it. It's very cool. It's great to see you. Well, have a great weekend. Stay safe. And we will see you next week. Hopefully we'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Hopefully I'll get my sound issues figured out too. So Girly Bear, thank you so much for gifting me with your time. Have a great weekend.